Mel Gibson AO is an American actor and filmmaker. He is best known for his action hero roles, particularly his breakout role as Max Rokitansky in the first 3 films of the post-apocalyptic action series Mad Max and as Martin Riggs in the buddy cop film series Lethal Weapon.
Born in Peekskill, New York, Gibson moved with his parents to Sydney, Australia, when he was 12 years old. He studied acting at the National Institute of Dramatic Art, where he starred opposite Judy Davis in a production of Romeo and Juliet. During the 1980s, he founded Icon Entertainment, a production company, which independent film director Adam Egoyan has called an alternative to the studio system. Director Peter Weir cast him as one of the leads in the World War I drama Gallipoli, which earned Gibson a Best Actor award from the Australian Film Institute, as well as a reputation as a serious, versatile actor.
In 1995, Gibson produced, directed, and starred in Braveheart, a historical epic, for which he won the Golden Globe Award for Best Director, the Academy Award for Best Director, and the Academy Award for Best Picture. He later directed and produced The Passion of the Christ, a biblical drama that was both financially successful and highly controversial. He received further critical notice for his directorial work of the action-adventure film Apocalypto, which is set in Mesoamerica during the early 16th century.
After several legal issues and controversial statements leaked to the public, Gibson's public image plummeted significantly, affecting his careers in acting and directing. His career began seeing resurgence with his performance in Jodie Foster's The Beaver, and his directorial comeback after an absence of 10 years, Hacksaw Ridge, which won 2 Academy Awards and was nominated for another 4, including Best Picture and Best Director for Gibson, his second nomination in the category.
Gibson was born in Peekskill, New York, the 6th of 11 children, and the second son of Hutton Gibson, a writer, and Irish-born Anne Patricia. Gibson's paternal grandmother was opera contralto Eva Mylott, who was born in Australia, to Irish parents, while his paternal grandfather, John Hutton Gibson, was a millionaire tobacco businessman from the American South. One of Gibson's younger brothers, Donald, is also an actor. Gibson's first name is derived from Saint Mael, 5th-century Irish saint, and founder of Gibson's mother's native diocese, Ardagh, while his second name, Comsil, is also shared by an Irish saint and is the name of the Onaclet parish in County Longford where Gibson's mother was born and raised. Because of his mother, Gibson retains dual Irish and American citizenship. Gibson is also an Australian permanent resident.
Gibson's father was awarded $145,000 in a work-related injury lawsuit against the New York Central Railroad on February 14, 1968, and soon afterwards relocated his family to West Pymble, Sydney, Australia. Mel was 12 years old at the time. The move to his grandmother's native Australia was for economic reasons, and his father's expectation that the Australian Defence Forces would reject his eldest son for the draft during the Vietnam War.
Gibson was educated by members of the Congregation of Christian Brothers at St. Leo's Catholic College in Warringah, New South Wales, during his high school years.
Gibson gained very favorable notices from film critics when he first entered the cinematic scene, as well as comparisons to several classic movie stars. In 1982, Vincent Canby wrote that Mr. Gibson recalls the young Steve McQueen. "I can't define star quality, but whatever it is, Mr. Gibson has it." Gibson has also been likened to a combination Clark Gable and Humphrey Bogart. Gibson's roles in the Mad Max series of films, Peter Weir's Gallipoli, and the Lethal Weapon series of films earned him the label of action hero. Later, Gibson expanded into a variety of acting projects, including human dramas such as the Franco Zeffirelli film version of Hamlet, and comedic roles such as those in Maverick and What Women Want. He expanded beyond acting into directing and producing, with The Man Without a Face, Braveheart, The Passion of the Christ, and Apocalypto. Jess Cagle of Time compared Gibson with Cary Grant, Sean Connery, and Robert Redford. Connery once suggested Gibson should play the next James Bond to Connery's M. Gibson turned down the role, reportedly because he feared being typecast.
Gibson studied at the National Institute of Dramatic Art in Sydney. The students at NIDA were classically trained in the British theatre tradition rather than in preparation for screen acting. As students, Gibson and actress Judy Davis played the leads in Romeo and Juliet, and Gibson played the role of Queen Titania in an experimental production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. After graduation in 1977, Gibson immediately began work on the filming of Mad Max, but continued to work as a stage actor and joined the State Theatre Company of South Australia in Adelaide. Gibson's theatrical credits include the character Estragon in Waiting for Godot and the role of Bith Loman in a 1982 production of Death of a Salesman in Sydney. Gibson's most recent theatrical performance, opposite Sissy Spacek, was the 1993 production of Love Letters by A. R. Gurney in Telluride, Colorado.
While a student at NIDA, Gibson made his film debut in the 1977 film Summer City, for which he was paid $400. Gibson then played the title character in the film Mad Max. He was paid $15,000 for this role. Shortly after making the film, he did a season with the South Australian Theatre Company. During this period, he shared a $30 a week apartment in Adelaide with his future wife Robin. After Mad Max, Gibson also played a mentally slow youth in the film Tim. During this period, Gibson also appeared in Australian television series guest roles. He appeared in serial The Sullivans as Naval Lieutenant Ray Henderson, in police procedural Cop Shop, and in the pilot episode of Prison Serial Punishment, which was produced in 1980, screened 1981.
Gibson joined the cast of the World War II action film Attack Force C, which was not released until 1982 when Gibson had become a bigger star. Director Peter Weir cast Gibson as one of the leads in the World War I drama Gallipoli, which earned Gibson another Best Actor award from the Australian Film Institute. Gallipoli also helped to earn Gibson the reputation of a serious, versatile actor and gained him the Hollywood agent Ed Limato. The sequel Mad Max 2 was his first hit in America, where it was released as The Road Warrior. Gibson again received positive notices for his role in Peter Weir's romantic thriller The Year of Living Dangerously. Following a one-year hiatus from film acting after the birth of his twin sons, Gibson took on the role of Fletcher Christian in The Bounty. Gibson earned his first $1 million salary for playing Max Rokitansky for the third time, in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Mel Gibson's first American film was Mark Rydell's drama The River, in which he and Sissy Spacek played struggling Tennessee farmers. Gibson then starred in the gothic romance MRS. Softful for Australian director Gillian Armstrong. He and Matthew Modine played condemned convict brothers opposite Diane Keaton as the warden's wife who visits them to read the Bible. In 1985, after working on 4 films in a row, Gibson took almost 2 years off at his Australian cattle station. He returned to play the role of Martin Riggs in Lethal Weapon, a film which helped to cement his status as a Hollywood leading man. Gibson's next film was Robert Towne's Tequila Sunrise, followed by Lethal Weapon 2. Gibson next starred in 3 films back-to-back, all released in 1990, Bird on a Wire, Air America, and Hamlet.
During the 1990s, Gibson alternated between commercial and personal projects. His films in the first half of the decade were Forever Young, Lethal Weapon 3, Maverick, and Braveheart. He then starred in Ransom, Conspiracy Theory, Lethal Weapon 4, and Payback. Gibson also served as the speaking and singing voice of John Smith in Disney's Pocahontas.
In 2000, Gibson acted in 3 films that each grossed over $100 million, The Patriot, Chicken Run, and What Women Want. In 2002, Gibson appeared in the Vietnam War drama We Were Soldiers and M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, which became the highest-grossing film of Gibson's acting career. While promoting Signs, Gibson said that he no longer wanted to be a movie star and would only act in film again if the script were truly extraordinary. In 2010, Gibson appeared in Edge of Darkness, which marked his first starring role since 2002 and was an adaptation of the BBC miniseries, Edge of Darkness. In 2010, following an outburst at his ex-girlfriend that was made public, Gibson was dropped from the talent agency of William Morris Endeavor.
Gibson most recently played two villains, Vos and Machete Kills in 2013, opposite Danny Trejo, and Conrad Stonebanks in The Expendables 3 opposite Sylvester Stallone in 2014.
On February 1, 2017, Variety confirmed that Gibson had been cast in the lead role of director as Craig Zoller's police brutality-themed film Dragged Across Concrete.
After his success in Hollywood with the Lethal Weapon series, Gibson began to move into producing and directing. With partner Bruce Davey, Gibson formed Icon Productions in 1989 in order to make Hamlet. In addition to producing or co-producing many of Gibson's own star vehicles, Icon has turned out many other small films, ranging from Immortal Beloved to An Ideal Husband. Gibson has taken supporting roles in some of these films, such as The $1 Million Hotel and The Singing Detective. Gibson has also produced a number of projects for television, including a biopic on the Three Stooges and the 2008 PBS documentary Carrier. Icon has grown from being just a production company to also be an international distribution company and film exhibitor in Australia and New Zealand.
In June 2010, Gibson was in Brownsville, Texas, filming scenes for the movie How I Spent My Summer Vacation, about a career criminal put in a tough prison in Mexico. In October 2010, it was reported that Gibson would have a small role in The Hangover, Part 2, but he was removed from the film after the cast and crew objected to his involvement.
Mel Gibson has credited his directors, particularly George Miller, Peter Weir, and Richard Donner, with teaching him the craft of filmmaking and influencing him as a director. According to Robert Downey, Jr., studio executives encouraged Gibson in 1989 to try directing, an idea he rebuffed at the time. Gibson made his directorial debut in 1993 with The Man Without a Face, followed 2 years later by Braveheart, which earned Gibson the Academy Award for Best Director. Gibson had long planned to direct a remake of Fahrenheit 451, but in 1999 the project was indefinitely postponed because of scheduling conflicts. Gibson was scheduled to direct Robert Downey, Jr. in a Los Angeles stage production of Hamlet in January 2001, but Downey's drug relapse ended the project. In 2002, while promoting We Were Soldiers and Signs to the press, Gibson mentioned that he was planning to pare back on acting and return to directing. In September 2002, Gibson announced that he would direct a film called The Passion in Aramaic and Latin with no subtitles because he hoped to transcend language barriers with filmic storytelling. In 2004, he released the controversial film The Passion of the Christ, with subtitles, which he co-wrote, co-produced, and directed. The film went on to become the highest-grossing rated-R film of all time with $370, $782, $930 in U.S. box office sales. Gibson directed a few episodes of Complete Savages for the ABC network. In 2006, he directed the action-adventure film Apocalypto, his second film to feature sparse dialogue in a non-English language. In November 2016, film critic Matt Solar cites named Gibson as the preeminent religious filmmaker in the United States.
Gibson's screen acting career began in 1976, with a role on the Australian television series The Sullivans. In his career, Gibson has appeared in 43 films, including the Mad Max and Lethal Weapon film series. In addition to acting, Gibson has also directed 4 films, including Braveheart and The Passion of the Christ, produced 11 films, and written 2 films. Films either starring or directed by Mel Gibson have earned over $2.5 billion in the United States alone. Gibson's filmography includes television series, feature films, television films, and animated films.
Gibson got his breakthrough role as the leather-clad post-apocalyptic survivor in George Miller's Mad Max. The independently financed blockbuster helped to make him an international star. In the United States, the actor's Australian accents were dubbed with American accents. The original film spawned 2 sequels, Mad Max 2 and Mad Max 3. A 4th movie, Mad Max: Fury Road, was made with Tom Hardy in the title role.
The 1981 Peter Weir film Gallipoli is about a group of young men from rural Western Australia who enlist in the Australian Imperial Force during World War I. They are sent to invade the Ottoman Empire, where they take part in the 1915 Gallipoli campaign. During the course of the movie, the young men slowly lose their innocence about the war. The climax of the movie centers on the catastrophic AIF offensive known as the Battle of the Neck.
Peter Weir cast Gibson in the role of Frank Dunn, an Irish-Australian drifter with an intense cynicism about fighting for the British Empire. Newcomer Mark Lee was recruited to play the idealistic Archie Hamilton after participating in a photo session for the director. Gibson later recalled,
"I'd auditioned for an earlier film and he told me right up front, 'I'm not going to cast you for this part. You're not old enough. But thanks for coming in. I just wanted to meet you.'"
The critically acclaimed film helped to further launch Gibson's career. He won the award for Best Actor in a Leading Role from the Australian Film Institute.
Gibson played a naive but ambitious journalist opposite Sigourney Weaver and Linda Hunt in Peter Weir's atmospheric 1982 film The Year of Living Dangerously, based on the novel of the same name by Christopher Koch. The movie was both a critical and commercial success, and the upcoming Australian actor was heavily marketed by MGM Studio. In his review of the film, Vincent Canby of the New York Times wrote, "If this film doesn't make an international star of Mr. Gibson, then nothing will. He possesses both the necessary talent and the screen presence." According to John Hiscock of the Daily Telegraph, the film did, indeed, establish Gibson as an international talent.
Gibson was initially reluctant to accept the role of Guy Hamilton. "I didn't necessarily see my role as a great challenge. My character was, like the film suggests, a puppet. And I went with that. It wasn't some star thing, even though they advertised it that way." Gibson saw some similarities between himself and the character of Guy. "He's not a silver-tongued devil. He's kind of immature and he has some rough edges, and I guess you could say the same for me."
Gibson followed the footsteps of Errol Flynn, Clark Gable, and Marlon Brando by starring as Fletcher Christian in a cinematic retelling of the Mutiny on the Bounty. The resulting 1984 film The Bounty is considered to be the most historically accurate version. However, Gibson has expressed a belief that the film's revisionism did not go far enough. He has stated that his character should have been portrayed as the film's antagonist. He has further praised Anthony Hopkins' performance as Lieutenant William Blythe as the best aspect of the film.
Gibson moved into more mainstream commercial filmmaking with the popular action comedy series Lethal Weapon, which began with a 1987 original. In the films he played LAPD Detective Martin Riggs, a recently widowed Vietnam veteran with a death wish and a penchant for violence and gunplay. In the films, he is partnered with a reserved family man named Roger Murtaugh, and starting with the second film, they're joined by a hyperactive informant named Leo Getz. Following the success of Lethal Weapon, director Richard Donner and principal cast revisited the characters in 3 sequels, Lethal Weapon 2, Lethal Weapon 3, and Lethal Weapon 4. With its 4th installment, the Lethal Weapon series embodied the quintessence of the buddy cop pick.
The film series has since been rebooted with a television adaptation, currently airing on Fox.
Gibson made the unusual transition from action to classical drama, playing William Shakespeare's Danish prince in Franco Zeffirelli's Hamlet. Gibson was cast alongside experienced Shakespearean actors Ian Holm, Alan Bates, and Paul Scofield. He compared working with Scofield to being thrown into the ring with Mike Tyson. Scofield said of Gibson, "Not the sort of actor you'd think would make an ideal Hamlet, but he had enormous integrity and intelligence."
In 1995, Mel Gibson directed, produced, and starred in Braveheart, a biographical film of Sir William Wallace, a Scottish nationalist who was executed in 1305 for high treason against King Edward I of England. Gibson received 2 Academy Awards, Best Director and Best Picture, for his second directorial effort. In winning the Academy Award for Best Director, Gibson became only the 6th actor-turned-filmmaker to do so. Braveheart influenced the Scottish nationalist movement and helped to revive the film genre of the historical epic. The Battle of Stirling Bridge sequence is considered by critics to be one of the all-time best directed battle scenes.
The film's depiction of the Prince of Wales as an effeminate homosexual caused the film to be attacked by the Gay Alliance. The Gay Alliance was especially enraged by a scene in which King Edward I murders his son's male lover by throwing him out of a castle window.
Gibson, who had previously been reported making several homophobic statements, now replied, "The fact that King Edward throws this character out a window has nothing to do with him being gay. He's terrible to his son, to everybody."
Gibson asserted that the reason that King Edward I kills his son's lover is because the king is a psychopath. Gibson also expressed bewilderment that some filmgoers laughed at this murder.
Gibson directed, produced, co-wrote, and funded the film The Passion of the Christ, which chronicled the passion and death of Jesus. The film was shot exclusively in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew. Although Gibson originally intended to release the film without subtitles, he eventually relented for theatrical exhibition. The film sparked divergent reviews, ranging from high praise to criticism of the violence.
The Anti-Defamation League accused Gibson of anti-Semitism over the film's unflattering depiction of Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin.
In The Nation, reviewer Katha Pollitt said, "Gibson has violated just about every precept of the conference's own 1988 criteria for the portrayal of Jews in dramatizations of the Passion. The priests have big noses and gnarly faces, lumpish bodies, yellow teeth. Herod Antipas and his court are a bizarre collection of oily-haired, epicene perverts. The good Jews look like Italian movie stars. Mary, who would have been around 50 and appeared 70, could pass for a ripe 35.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.